Shining bright lotus. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to really look and see everyone. And meditating together is a lovely thing too, is it not? I play the role of the Jiki-Jitsu. Jiki-Jitsu is the meditation master in I think this is a Rinzai form, I believe, if not, if I understand it correctly. And so my job is to teach meditation. And, well, you're seeing me do that. And I think there's a few pieces that would help if I provide you a little bit of explanation on what we're doing. And so first, context. On the one hand, some might say that it's a lot more, you're hearing me do what's called pointing out instructions, and that's not a very Zen style. So in the more traditional Soto style of Zen, there's barely any instructions. The main instruction is shikantaza, which is be with what is arising, which we do a little bit, quite a bit in a certain way of just let whatever rises, arises. And Junpo had Junpo Roshi had a certain kind of group of instructions that were sort of modified koans that he sort of adapted from the Rinzai tradition of his teacher Edo Roshi. And for me, they are all wonderful forms. There's nothing the matter with these basic forms. And on my own exploration, I've been sort of looking at what you would say is kind of more modern technologies around meditation practices. And it's interesting because on the one hand, modern, and on the other hand, to some extent, a lot of it goes back to a practice that the Buddha did, which is called anapanasati. Okay, so I'm really a very big fan of a guy named Chuodasa, who wrote the book The Mind Illuminated, and the form that he's teaching is anapanasati. And he uses the 9 stages of Maitreya as the form. And I've also been studying with someone named John Churchill, who is a Mahamudra teacher. That's a 3rd turning practice. And they use the same form. So it's an interesting, well, it's a modern technology, it's not a modern technology, it's an old technology. That's a very Buddhist thing. Is it new? Is it old? What is it? What's different about it is it's not sitting back and allowing you to find it yourself. It's putting information into the system in a way with the idea that that will help you focus on what will likely move you in a direction of awakening. So, but as a few pieces of actual language that's really important, and you're hearing me use the language. One is the difference between the attentional system, what I'm paying attention to, and the object of attention. Those are different things. So in our literature in the morning service, you hear this pure awareness is embodied, or you hear this awareness, or you hear clear, deep heart mind. That is different than what I'm paying attention to. We hope eventually maybe you will pay attention to, or you'll notice it with your attention, basically, because if you've been through Mono Zen facilitation, you know that it doesn't really come and go, pure awareness. We just aren't noticing it with the image, like when the clouds are in between us and the sun, you don't know the sun's there, but it's there, right? So there's something clouding it up. So I introduced very early in this the idea that you could attend to concrete objects, like the video camera. You could tend to subtle objects, like how are you feeling right now? Not a thing, right? It's a feeling. Or you could attend to awareness. And you can actually get to the point, at first, you have to sort of discover it. One of the great things about Mondo Zen facilitation, Mingo and I were talking about this, is it's a really wonderful technology to have the experience of pure awareness. Right? It helps point it out in a way they're pointing out instructions. Koans are pointing out instructions, actually. They're kind of, interestingly, old versions of pointing out instructions, 9th to 12th centuries, but Junpo's versions are very 20th century. Right? Can you listen without an opinion? That's a pointing out instruction. It's giving something for your mind to do with the hope that if you do it, you'll start to, well, listening is not a concrete thing. Well, I can listen to the sounds, that's concrete. Oh, you know, am I listening to my thoughts? That's a subtle thing. Well, if I listen without opinion, oh, I wonder what I'll start to notice. Well, I start to notice pure awareness. I become aware of pure awareness, aware. That offers us the ability to do a really big fancy word. I'm going to throw this really big fancy word out and make sure we understand it. It's called metacognition. Okay, so what is metacognition? The simplest definition of metacognition is thinking about thinking. Okay? Thinking about thinking. So sometimes people write in the journals, and I said, you know, I can't get that thought out of my head. Or I can't get that song out of my head. Or, it's amazing, every time she does this, I do that. Emotionally, I react, I get triggered. That's metacognition, right? We just do it, right? We do metacognition. It's a fine skill that we learn, and actually it's good to get better at it. It turns out it's a useful thing. You know, it's like coaches help you do metacognition. Fujin Roshi's a professional coach, so he helps people do a lot of metacognition. Actually uses whole brain learning. It's a good way of getting you to really think about thinking with your whole brain, not just the one you really like. Okay, because we like the one that we really like. Okay, but what about the other part? So thinking about thinking. So, well, pure awareness isn't thinking. Let's say that again. Pure awareness isn't thinking. It's actually, there's no thinking involved. Right? It just, well, it can be embodied. Words don't go well with pure awareness. That's why we use pure awareness, dhyana, cham, clear, deep heart, mind, fundamental well-being, a lot of language. Okay, I've been using a lot of this loving awareness. I like loving awareness because that to me is pure awareness coming from the heart. Right? It's a variation of pure awareness, loving awareness. But it's not a thinking thing, but I can use my mind to notice it. And so part of meditation, on the one hand, is using the attentional system to get the clouds to separate, and then when the sky is clear, to notice it. Right? Not to think about it. Oh, wow, this is it. The sky is really clear. I'm awake now. Well, no, you're thinking again. Right? We're thinking about thinking. It's this sort of like, huh, wow, noticing. Well, in Mondo Zen, it's the 5th koan. What is it like? Silent. Eternal. Timeless. Vast, right? There's a way that there's an experience that we have, and we can try and put words on it, but the mental function to get there is called, here's the big word, metacognitive awareness. not pure awareness. Pure awareness is an object. Metacognitive awareness is a thing that we do. We use our mind to notice, right? And if we use our mind to notice it, we can have it stabilize a lot more because we have we have memory, mental memory, but you also have somatic memory, right? So that's why it's kind of like, so you'll hear me in my instructions near the end say, notice the quality of the surface of your mind. That's trying to use some language to say, notice what's going on here, right? I don't say name it, write it down, give it words. It's just pay attention. Pay attention in a different way than pay attention to what I'm saying. Or pay attention to the sound of the car that goes by. Or pay attention to the temperature in this room. Right? You want to follow me? Okay? That's metacognitive awareness. So we use our attentional system to get better, or to get more skillful, to get more practiced at noticing pure awareness, pure loving awareness, and we also use the metacognitive awareness to notice it. Now attention is a muscle like playing any other muscle, like tennis. So, if I said go out and play tennis for half an hour 10 times tomorrow, you might find yourself being tired in the afternoon, right? And your arm might get sore. So when you come to a meditation retreat, you might find that it's hard to keep doing it. Like the muscle gets tired. Zen really likes that style, just to be honest. That's one of Zen's things. And there's a reason for that, which I'm not going to go into, but there is a reason for that because that's one of the methods for getting there. But in the postmodern technological version of it, which you're hearing me teach, I actually give you breaks. I sort of say, you know what, if you're tired of using your attentional system, why don't you just relax now? Because I actually know, just like if you've ever been to a 2 or 3 hour lecture, that most people can only pay attention to it for about 20 minutes. I can show you the research on that, right? So that's why actually we do half-hour sits and get up and walk, right? Versus say sit for an hour and a half and hope that you're going to be able to sit for an hour and a half physically, or also even concentrate for an hour and a half. It doesn't work that way. The muscles just don't get built. So you want to build the muscles slowly. And so you'll find each day your attention system will get stronger, right? When it gets stronger, you might start noticing the clear sky and the clouds parting. And occasionally by pointing out instructions will say notice. And you'll go, oh, because the 10th koan, what feeling arises when you notice? For many it's joyous, right? It's a different kind of joyous. It's like, yeah, I like this. Meditative joy that arises naturally, usually when you stop thinking, and the object is pure awareness. Okay, that's kind of a cool thing. Notice the joy. You go, oh, I want some more. Right, that's another thing, motivation. Okay, so that's some basic terms. Attentional system, objects of awareness, pure awareness, awareness of pure awareness, metacognitive awareness. You might have heard at various times people talking about pure awareness as being something very much like what a baby experiences, a newborn, when their mind hasn't been busied with taxes and politics. Right? Right? Okay? You could say that's primordial awareness. Is that a fair term? Primordial awareness? It's like, I'm alive, I can tell. Actually, babies can't really tell what's inside them and outside them. And they can't actually really tell whether they're asleep or awake, believe it or not. It's just this kind of like, wow, kind of thing. That's a primordial awareness. But they can definitely tell who mom is. Okay? Okay, so there's a primary relationship that's happening between primordial awareness and relationships. Okay? So one of the teachers of the teachers, which is a guy named Dan Brown, who's one of the teachers of pointing out instructions, he wrote a book called, I think, The Great Turning, which is very big, it's very Vajrayana, Mahamudra Vajrayana text, is also an attachment psychologist. Right? And so one of his teachings is that the way we relate to our mom, our attachment style, may actually be very similar to the way we will start to relate to the experience of pure awareness. Interesting. So if we have an anxious attachment, which is like, oh my God, well then we start to have these experiences of this peacefulness and we get anxious. We don't get joyous. We get anxious. Wait a second, what happened to my thinking? I liked it. This is kind of weird, right? So what you're hearing is a healthy attachment begins with safety and security. You heard me use those words? Safety and security, right? When you feel safe, if you had a healthy attachment with your mom, and some of us did and some of us didn't. Right? I was in the generation where we didn't nurse, so I guess doesn't mean I didn't attach to my mom, but certainly wasn't nursing. Right? The first is safety and security. The second one is attunement. Right? The primordial baby is feeling like the mother is attuning, a being is attuning to this person. Right? So you're hearing that instruction. That was actually the start of this morning's instruction. And that's feeling attuned to and attuning to, right? In both directions, right? Right? That's learning that particular piece. The third element of attachment, of healthy attachment, is being seen and valued for who you are. And you might sound familiar with the mentor meditation that we did. Yes? Right? Someone sitting in front of you, seeing you, feeling seen and felt, right? And taking that in. Right? So one of them, this is a very 21st century method of learning how to meditate, is to start always with healthy attachment on the way to emptiness. Right? So you've been going through that process. Does that make sense? It's not like we don't leave it behind. We don't leave it behind. We actually incorporate it into the emptiness because we want to feel secure in clear, deep heart mind. We want to feel attuned, secure, and like we can still be ourselves. Junpa used to say that all the time. We're not giving up our egos. That's spiritual bypassing, right? We're recognizing that who we are can be completely within the context of this universal mind. So far, so good? Right? That's attachment theory. That's attachment meditation instructions. Okay? I'm going to pause and look at my notes, which I didn't manage to find. There are two other attachment values, by the way, which I left out, are being experienced as being valued and being supported to explore interests, which I think Fujin models really, really well, right? As a leader of a Sangha. We honor the traditions, but there is a way in which there's very much exploring, right? Which we saw in bringing yin yoga, or bringing in the horses into these forms, right? And the Taoists, and we feel valued and seen, versus, okay, we're all going to do this classical form, performance structure. So that's attachment. The other thing that happens when the attentional system is practicing, you all remember that, gross objects everyone kind of gets. It's like, well, you're meditating, all of a sudden you're thinking about something. That's gross, you're like, oh my God. It's like, what happened or what's going on? You get distracted. Those are gross distractions. And you pretty soon learn to stay more focused over time. Right? Well, when the mind practices quieting, becoming calm, and starts to get good at it, one of the side effects, and we've learned that through neurobiology, is it kind of gets bored and sleepy. We like being active. Try not turning your cell phone on for a day. See what that's like. You'll nap more. Lovely event, by the way. Go on a street retreat sometime and spend 4 to 8 days without your cell phone with a bunch of people. It's a fabulous interpersonal social phenomenon where you really just like, no money, no cell phone. What are you going to do? You're going to talk. You're going to interact. You're going to attune to each other. Right? It's kind of cool. Right? But anyway, so the phenomenon of what happens when the attentional system works over time, there are actually 5 different patterns. And in the classical teachings, these are called the 5 hindrances. Okay, so this isn't a 21st century idea. It's a very old thing. It's taught way back in the Buddha's days, the 5 hindrances. Okay, but you see the 5 hindrances because it kind of comes up, because the first thing for many of us, particularly when it's warm, we're practicing a lot, is kind of lethargy and fogginess. Okay, that's a thing that's a hindrance, we call that. Okay, because it's like getting in the way of pure awareness. When the sun is shining and the sky is blue and it's clear, it's clarity, right? And you're focusing on it, and you're like, I'll stand, I'll do something, right? There's lethargy. That's one of the 5 hindrances. Okay. Another of the 5 hindrances is agitation, restlessness. I got to move. I can't sit still. I've been sitting still for too long. Or your body talks. My hip says I don't like sitting still for that long. Or my foot falls asleep, says, well, you sit still long enough, I'm going to complain. Right? So that's agitation. Okay? That's another one. One that I'm not going to talk about, but there's doubt. Well, actually, we've seen some doubt. Why am I here? It's the big doubt term. Why am I doing this? Usually it's a second-day phenomenon. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. We don't need to talk about that. We have demonstrations. Okay. And the other one is really interesting, which is, and I see them as kind of paired, but there's desire and aversion. The aversion is, I don't like this, can it be different? And the desire is, I want it to be this way. Right? I see them sort of coupled. Right? But those are called the 5 hindrances. Okay? And this is, 2,000, 2,500-year-old teaching. 5 hindrances. So way back in Buddha's time, when they were practicing, we all had to start noticing the 5 hindrances. How do you notice the 5 hindrances? Well, it's interesting. It may be metacognition, it may be metacognitive awareness. You kind of need both those skills, because you have to have enough metacognitive awareness to know that something's getting in the way. Just be saying, well, I've been sitting here, I'm getting sleepy, that's just metacognition, right? But if it's saying, well, like, this is, I'm fabulous, interesting, I'm falling asleep. Or this is fabulous, I think falling asleep is pure awareness. That's a common thing. Like the dullness of sitting for a long time can feel like you're progressing in meditation. And actually all you're doing, and that's actually, it's called a subtle distraction. That's actually Chula Dasa's language. It's a subtle distraction. It's not a thing. It's very subtle. It's part of the fabric of the way the mind is functioning in some way or another. Right? And so subtle distractions all have antidotes. Okay, each one has an antidote. We're not here to do the work around these antidotes. Okay, the main one that we're focusing on is lethargy. That's the only antidote we're really working with. Okay, and you'll see me working with that tomorrow as well, which is the idea of, and this is both Chuladas's teachings, it's all three of the teachers, John Churchill's teachings and Dan Brown's, which is one of the ways is you have to pay closer attention to the object. You almost have to fill the mind up with something. It's like you got to put a really good movie on so you can get engrossed in it so that you don't fall asleep, right? But of course that movie is and some object, in this case tomorrow, some of you didn't get this instruction yet, you'll get it tomorrow. It's like, okay, we're going to go to the sensations of the breath and the heart. So we can really, really learn to zoom in like a fine-tooth comb, to get really curious, to really look under the microscope at that breath, to really get committed. Really, really, really like, if I'm going to keep looking at this thing so closely that the dullness goes away. That makes sense? That's the antidote for lethargy and dullness. Of course, use our language. If you get so focused on your attentional system, you might not notice the clarity of sky, right? Because you're busy focusing on this thing. That's why you need metacognitive awareness, right? Because it actually starts to happen simultaneously. As you become more metacognitively aware, you start to notice the dullness, you zoom in. You get really clear when you start to notice things are kind of like relaxing and opening up and getting clear again. Then you relax your attention and you sink back into loving awareness. Right? But that is actually something that you're doing with your mind. I can give you instructions, but ultimately that's a more advanced style of meditation. That's something you learn how to do with practice. That makes sense to you? And so I like pointing out instructions because they help you practice these skills. You want to see what it's like to not have anybody pointing out? We just did a half an hour sit with pointing out any instructions. What'd you guys do? You don't have to talk about it, just think for a second. You had to do something for half an hour with your meditation because no one gave you any instructions. You did something, right? But I can assure you that along the way, you had an attention on something. You may have started to have moments of clarity and clarity of mind. You may have gotten a little lethargic. Fujin and I did. We both stood up, right? We antidoted with our bodies, right? That's how you start to use your time skillfully to maximize your time. This is our time to do this work, right? And you could also just get sleepy and bliss out. Actually, I love that. Actually, my wife likes to tease me about it, and I've done it for years. Actually, sometimes you do too, because we're really busy guys, and so there's nothing the matter with doing an hour sit and having a half hour snooze in the middle of it. Yeah. Our bodies need that. Emio loves to talk about that. Yeah. Totally fine thing to do. Just don't call that awakening. Call that a really healthy snooze in the middle of the meditation. Okay? Yeah. That's it. But yoga too. That's really good. Really relax. Right? That's a fine thing, but make the distinctions. And actually, often after that snooze, there could be a lot of clarity. I find that. Do you find that experience sometime? Because you're not negotiating lethargy anymore. You actually start to focus again, and things start to open up, and I'm using this language, zooming in and zooming out. So zooming in is when you focus your mind, and zooming out is when you just allow what's arising to be present, to be there, right? Which you've heard in some of the instructions when I just say, okay, now just drop your attention into the earth, and you may notice stability, and it's open, boundless, right? It's just spacious, right? It's just present, it's just there, like that all the time. You're just busy thinking. So, I'm going to wrap I don't know what time this thing's supposed to end, but I think probably pretty soon. I don't know how much time we have for Q, a couple of questions. I think we have a couple minutes for questions. But what I hope that you see that what my job at this retreat is actually to teach you meditation, okay? And it's a Zen structure that's been opened up to include traditional spirituality practices, traditional Native American, where we've added yoga, which is lovely, a bunch of different pieces, and I'm using some other meditation technologies, skills for you, that Fujin is supportive of. It's not exactly Zen, but it's definitely meditation. It's definitely toward the same object, that we're all here to remember and choose that we're not two. We're all the body of the Buddha, right? And how do we do that effectively? And so we do an attentional system we're practicing. Right? We're noticing glimpses, more stable experiences of loving awareness. We're learning this. Pointing out metacognitive awareness, this, oh, interesting, I'm kind of sleepy, or oh, I'm really clear, I'm bright right now, wow, right, because that's very motivating, right? Okay, where the sequence is through healthy attachment. It's actually, for those who follow chakras, it follows the chakras, right? First chakra, safety, security. Second chakra, two people attuned to the earth, right? We haven't done the third one yet. You'll see what it's like tomorrow. We began it with the being seen and valued for who you are. Power, third chakra. Interestingly enough, I suppose that in there for you. Right. And as you're having this experience, because I think we're all having this experience, there are pretty classically defined things that get in the way, these 5 hindrances. So now you know that they exist. And actually, you know, when you spend more time, you can sort of become friends with the one that you are the most friends with, right? Like I'm really, one of mine is, you know, is desire, aversion. Like I'm really good at wanting it to be different. You know, those at the staff meeting, I was like, is this my stuff or is this something that I should be concerned about? And that was the question I asked. Because it's easy for me to want it to be different, right? So that's one of my patterns. It's also easy for me to be snoozy and lethargic. So I know my 2 big ones. Which ones are yours, right? You'll have to, you know, work with that, and there's more work in there. But those are the 5 hindrances. So that's what mostly what we're going to cover, or mostly what we're doing with the meditation. We're most of the way through it. There's definitely a little bit more instructions landing on this. What I say, learning how to really focus in, increase your interest, right, as a skill, right, and then be able to sort of relax and zoom out. So that was my piece. I'm going to say thank you. I think I have actually 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has a question or a comment that goes along with what I just said. Lisa.
Can thank you be a comment? Because,
Well, yes.
yeah, for me, as more of a newbie-ish earth, it was totally clear, you know, now that you laid out your roadmap. Yeah, I get it. And I want to thank you for that, because it's truly, I see a lot of value in it. I mean, I feel the value. It's a cool approach, it really is. So you're an innovator, obviously, and it resonates. So I just wanted to say thank you for the Dharma Talk 1.
Thank you. And you're very welcome to.
I actually want to encourage each of us to, we'll just go around, and what was what stood out to you about what you heard from Ekai's talk? What stands out? Abaya, you go first.
Yeah. I think something that really stood out for me that, you know, I didn't really consider before was these, you know, these levels or types of attachment. And, you know, I kind of lumped attachment into one big bucket before. And now I have a better understanding of some different types of attachment. And maybe that's going to be helpful for me to address it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now I understand that it's not all just one big bucket of attachment. Thank you for that.
Beautiful. Lisa?
Mhm. Well, there's a few things, but if I was to pull the big thread, it was kind of like the flexing this new muscle that we're learning how to zoom in and zoom out. All right, so increasing our focus. I wrote it's a skill, you know, increase our interest as a skill.
Good.
And that's gonna help me to be a meditator. A little bit,
You get a lot of those skills tomorrow too, so.
along,
look forward to it.
yeah. I loved some of you said you negotiate, you don't negotiate lethargy, because you know that's one of your, you know, hindrances, right? And you antidote it with your body, standing up, that's really cool, so. Great.
That's a new innovation for us too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the first time.
Yeah, welcome to the grand experiment. I think we're just get tired of getting teased about it. We might as well try and do something. Okay, Walker.
Well, it was a very dense talk. I mean, you put a lot in a very short, and I saw Willow made some notes, so I look forward to seeing her notes later. And I don't know if this video is.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Okay,
You'll get it.
well, wonderful. I'd like to go over it again. I think, you know, one thing I would just say is, you mentioned shikantaza. It's just more or less be quiet and be with what arises. And that has been kind of my approach. And now I realize there's a whole lot of other ways to approach meditation. And that's very helpful to me.
Willow.
Definitely really deeply affected and moved by the idea that our attachment to our mother affects our attachment to awakening. That's just like a bolt. Wow. Yeah,
Beautiful.
grateful for that.
Scott?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that back in. That was a good piece too for me. I think I was sitting with just bringing in the 5 hindrances and just what your 2, being aware of your 2 aversions right now, kind of seeing what's rising and then this, did you say the second day phenomena? Wait, why am I doing this? Yeah, that's kicking in. And I appreciate your innovation. You are bringing in different tools from so many different different paths and bringing them together, the best of all, you know, so I appreciate that. Dan Brown, was that?
Yeah, Dan
You know, from my experience, when I was in lethargy in the last sit, and I opened my eyes and they were both standing up, I was like, oh, what did I miss? And I had that clarity right there, and I chuckled. So I was in it with that. But
Did you
yeah,
stand
I like
up?
that there's a choice, that there's more than one way, and that the history and the innovation can combine and find a lattice work to hold us together.
I don't have any comments. It's still very new, but very interesting. Speaking of you 2 standing up, I thought maybe you were going to do something. That's why I didn't stand up, because I was in that lethargy point as well. But again, I didn't know, so.
And we're hoping
So
to
it's
stand up.
all things that I'm, you know, learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, And we're hoping you stand up, because we see you're just stand up. You get to do it.
Yeah, this is part of the safety and security, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Take a stand, and just, if nothing else, to experience what it's like. Yeah. Ego.
Yeah, I don't know that I can point to any one specific item. I think more so I just took the entire talk in as, yeah, shit, I've kind of shoved my head through enough walls to kind of seemingly figure most of this stuff out without a whole lot of guidance to, and I'm like, okay, yeah, wow, this might be really helpful and for other people to have this shared with them up front so they don't have to go through a lot of really determined, excruciating figuring it out on their own. So thank you.
And yeah, thank you. And that's actually, to me, that's the description of Zen still work, the traditional Zen works, but you're describing that's the path is kind of figure it out. Right? And it kind of takes a long time.
Yeah, now I've got all
Stick
this
with it.
clarity, and I'm like, great, here comes the tool that could have saved about how many years. Alright, whatever, it's all still good.
Luckily, there's nowhere to get.
For me, during your talk, the most important thing that you pointed out for me was the fact that that metacognitive awareness is a skill that's built over time. Like how it landed for me was that like if I think I'm gonna just run a marathon without doing anything, like the marathon's not gonna go great. So I really like, it's actually really encouraging to hear that, like, yeah, it's building blocks, and I really appreciated that.
Well, what I'm struck with is going deeper into meditation and all the assistance that you've given us so far, and we're gonna get more tomorrow. I'm excited about going more deeply into the meditation. Thank you.
I've got Dan Brown's big thick book, I gotta dust it off. I've got Kula Das's Audible, I've gotta rewind. And John Churchill's in my backyard, I gotta take that dude out for coffee. But the itch I've gotta scratch is metacognition and the awareness of metacognition. Thank you.
Appreciate your help guiding me through your story. I understood a lot of it.
Yeah, your research, I noticed your guided meditation. It kind of explains more about the variety of guided meditation you have. I can identify, all the I guess, pigeonholes that you're talking about, but I noticed that you have a variety of guided meditation that I know is much more sophisticated, I guess, and that I'm starting to open up my eyes more about, I guess the whole all the cultures, I guess, and all the scientists and all the people that are inventing and reawakening different kinds of meditation. And then I noticed that there's probably a whole lot of it that still has to be discovered. And Maybe I'm gonna discover something too.
You will. I guess it's up to me, huh? Well, one of the great things, Ekai is so innovative, and I'm like Ingo, you know, I worked many years to try to get to somewhere, and he does it all in 2 days. And my mind just crashes. I go, oh, this is Zen. This is Renzai. When he does all that scientific stuff in 2 days, it just blows my mind. I just go, so thank you.
Well, for me, there's two things that really just stood out. One is I am so determined about Atadipa. You know, I've taken a lifetime vow to just work with that particular passage, and whole-brained, open-hearted, skill-centered. And the part that I'm just amazed by is the skillful means has been lacking in my 23 years of doing this. It's like, sometimes I'll tell people, Jumbo told me after 11 years, oh my God, you finally got Mondo Zen. And I was pissed. I said, well, I'm gonna take this, and then that guy gives me a call. I was all over it about, why can't we do a train the trainer and help save a decade? And we did. We did. So that people can understand it, and then hopefully they can come back around. And the second thing is that I just see this marriage of ancient traditions and modern research, and it's coming together. And that's why I just so appreciate you having the time and the willingness and the intellect to be able to do that. He always calls me and says, well, you gotta do this and this and this. That. I can barely keep up, but I do it because I know that he's really on to things. So with Fujin being about benefiting future generations, I figure we're really, especially with these cell phones and stuff, just imagine how the neurochemistry is going on with our kids these days. So to be able to break through some of that, it's going to take some ancient work and some modern work to be able to do that. So that's why I'm so excited about the pointing out instructions. And I'm here to tell you from day one, I've learned more in the last couple of days than on any single retreat I've gone to. It was a lot of, no, you sit with that and you just figure it out, and it'll eventually come, and then you can have this aha moment and you're enlightened. But I feel like that's not the only part. Listening, clear, deep heart mind's one thing, but we're here to alleviate suffering in the world. You also have to go respond to people in the world. And they don't know about metacognition, and I love the distinction between metacognition and metacognitive awareness. Oh my God, we'll have to get into that more too. So as you can tell, I get kind of excited and enthusiastic about what Ekai's bringing. So, and I want to put you on the spot. What was, during your talk, what was one of those genuine insights like, oh wow, that sounded kind of impressive. I thought that was good.
One of the fun things that for me at this stage of the game is teaching back in a Hollow Bones context and how the Mondo koans pop up. You heard it in my talk. Oh yeah, the first koan. Oh yeah, the fifth koan. Oh yeah, the 10th koan. Like they just pop back up all by themselves. Yeah. Because that was my training. Right, and I don't, some of you, not everybody here, oh, I know the 10th koan, but many of you do, and so I just really, I'm enjoying that particular part of having that, it's just like, oh, that's the 10th koan, oh, good, that's nice. It's like keep learning. That happened the other night recently where we did this whole talk. Mingo, I think you were on, it's like, and Emio was on, it's like, and at the end it was like, this just all sounds like the second koan. And it was like, oh, right.
What?
It was like a whole big discussion, but we didn't say we're doing the second koan now. We had this whole big discussion about something. I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
At the end, it was like, oh, this just sounds like this is what we're talking about. And it was lovely. You might have been on that call. I don't know. It's hard to tell because you might have been on the call. Anyway.
So we're discovering and rediscovering, and I really want to invite all of you to, this is a container where take full advantage of, experiment a little bit to find out what helps, especially with those hindrances. And if you're doing something completely inappropriate, don't worry, we'll let you know. But I really want you to take advantage.
That's my job.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Shining bright lotus.